Exodus chapter number 3, verses 21 to 22. God is bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. He's taking them to the wilderness and then eventually to the promised land. And before they leave, he tells them, I want you to borrow all of the gold earrings, all of the bracelets, all of the necklaces, all of the jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and all of the expensive things. I want you to take them from the Egyptians, borrow them, and when I lead you out of Egypt, you are going to leave loaded. You're going to have the nicest of clothes. You're going to have jewelry of silver and of gold. You're going to have more than you've ever had. You're going to spoil the Egyptians, the Bible says. And God does just that. He takes the children of Israel out of Egypt with a great wealth, silver and gold and all type of expensive clothing. And what's interesting is when the children of Israel, they get into the wilderness, and Moses is up in the mountain. He's receiving the 10 commandments from God. The children of Israel, they look at Aaron and they say, Aaron, we've got to have a God that we can worship and we can see like we used to back in Egypt. And the Bible tells us that they broke off the earrings. They took the gold jewelry from Egypt and they melted it down and they made a calf, a molten calf of gold. They took that which God had given them and they sacrificed it on an altar to satisfy their own self-will. What's really sad about this is God did not give them the jewelry just as an accessory. God gave them all of the silver, all of the gold for a purpose. When you look back at Genesis chapter number 35, we see that God's intent was that the silver and the gold, that it be a free will offering to the tabernacle, and that all of the gold items that would be made for the tabernacle of God, for the temple of God, would come as a free will offering of all that God had given to his people. And so you see, God had entrusted them with silver and with gold and with fine clothing. And his intent was that when it was time, they would then, of their own free will, give to God a portion, just a portion, of the wealth, the riches with which he had blessed them. But you see, the children of Israel did what you and I far too often in our Christian life do. They took something that was really God's property and they sacrificed it on an altar to themselves. May I tell you today, I watch many a Christian. They take that which God has entrusted them with, and rather than using it for God, they sacrifice it on an altar to themselves. Every week, I watch people take the provisions that God has given them, the financial provisions that he's given them, and rather than using them as God would have them to and giving a portion back to him, they sacrifice every penny on an altar to themselves. I watch people take the presents that God gives to them, the talents, if you will, maybe a winsome personality or maybe a great intellectual mind that could be used for God's service. And they take the various talents and presents that God has given to them, and rather than yielding those talents to the Lord for his use, they take those presents and they take those talents and they use them to promote themselves and to get themselves ahead. And they sacrifice the presents that God has given them onto an altar unto themselves. Many people, they will take the place that God has given them and they will use the place that God has given them as a springboard for their next place, as a way to get ahead in life. And I tell you this morning, God has given you a place to serve, and the place to which he has brought you is for his service. The place to which God has brought you, he wants you to use that for him. Don't use the place in life, whether it is the financial place in life or the economic place in life or the spiritual place in life or even the physical geographical place that God has brought you. Do not take the place that God has given to you and sacrifice it on an altar to yourself to fulfill your own will. Realize God has entrusted it to you for his use. I watch some people, they sacrifice the people in their lives. on an altar to themselves. Husbands will sacrifice their wife and children to meet their own desires. Parents will sacrifice their own children's spiritual well-being to satisfy themselves. May I tell you, it is a dangerous thing to take something that God has given to us, He has entrusted to us to use for His service, and then sacrifice that on an altar to ourselves. Let me serve you notice today, Christian, every part of your life, whether it is your monetary provisions, your personal talents, the place in life to which God has brought you, the position that He has given you, or even the people that He's placed in your life. Do not be so foolish, as were the children of Israel, to take that which God has given you and sacrifice it on an altar to yourself to meet your desires, to fulfill your will. Let me challenge you today, dear Christian. The only way you will have a lasting joy and contentment and happiness is if you take that which God has given you and you, of your own free will, offer it to Him for His service. And may I tell you, when the children of Israel did offer the gold to the Lord, they were in a much better place. We never give anything to God that He does not repay at a much higher rate. Might I encourage you today, Christian, the place that God has brought you in life, He's brought you here to serve Him with. The people He's given you, we are indebted to Him to lead them in a right way and teach them to serve the Lord. The monetary provisions that He's given to us, the personal presents or talents or gifts that He's given us, let us, as He intended, offer them for His service of a willing heart that wants to well utilize that which we have been entrusted with. I don't know about you, but I don't want to sacrifice what is really God's on an altar to myself. I pray this devotional has been a help to you. We love you, folks. We'll see you tonight at 7.